Hey everybody, welcome into a new edition of the Territory Talk Podcast, the official podcast of the Florida Panthers, presented as always by Baptist Health, the official sports medicine provider of the Florida Panthers. Doug Plagens, Jameson Olive here with you as always. A series recap edition. Panthers getting by the Tampa Bay Lightning in 5 games, rather convincingly when you look back at the overall body of work. That's 4 straight seasons the Panthers have advanced past the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's back-to-back seasons the Panthers have ousted their cross-state rivals in 5 games. And now the two teams have met in the playoffs 4 times, each team with 2 victories over the other. We talk about it so many times, Jameson, and this is a chance to go back and, again, reflect, enjoy that series, look back at, again, a successful first round. We've talked about it so many times. The Panthers, they're in the golden era of Panthers hockey right now. 4 straight seasons past the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And again, I hope everybody enjoyed that first round series. I know it was some great hockey. There was some tension, always to be expected between the two teams, but the Panthers showing once again they're equipped to play any kind of game anybody wants to play. Anything you want to throw at them, this team's ready for it. There's not anything in the game that this group at this point has not seen. We've said it time and time again, as battle-tested a team as you'll see. Maybe no better example of that than Game 4, but overall just an impressive 5 games for the Panthers as they get by the Lightning in 5, a 6-3 win to finish it off at the time of this recording last night.
Yeah, Doug, and if you looked at the pre-series predictions, this is the greatest upset of all time. There's never
Nobody
been a
was
great
giving
upset.
the Panthers much respect on this
I think
one.
the Panthers got more respect when they were going up against the Bruins, who had the greatest regular season of all time. I don't know what happened. I don't know what changed. I had to go back and look at the pre-series predictions, but I've never seen a Stanley Cup champion, a defending Stanley Cup champion, get that much disrespect heading into a round 1 series. And I think maybe it's because everyone was hoping and praying that the Panthers were going to fall off. But, man, I have to imagine, Doug, knowing that group and knowing that locker room and knowing that they love to have the chip on their shoulder, that just got them fired up. Because as much as you try to put things out, all that stuff eventually gets in there. Just like Pat Maroon's comment before Game 5 about, he wishes he was in there because he owns the Panthers. I'm sure that got in there too. You can't fire up the Panthers. They love that. They feed off that. They love being the underdogs. And this was your one playoff series and one kind of playoff run to take that away from them. And for some reason, everyone gave it right back to them. I just don't get it. So before we keep talking, I have to go back and look at this, Doug. Sportsnet pre-series predictions. 16 of 18 writers picked the Lightning. ESPN, 20 of 26 writers picked the Lightning. The Athletic, 80+% picked the Lightning to win that series. How does that happen? And my biggest fear after reading all that, most of these people are the same people, and I didn't include the TNT broadcast, which of course was very against the Panthers, and most other broadcasts typically very against the Panthers in terms of their predictions.
And when we
Mark Messier in particular, I don't know what the Panthers did to him.
And
he's
good
not
for
a Panther
pulling
fan.
up those numbers, because if we were just out here spouting nobody gives the Panthers any love, it sounds like we're just 2 guys on a team podcast.
This is real. We have the receipts.
There are numbers here.
Yes.
There are statistics.
But I just got to say, these are the same people that before most games are giving you their ideas for some parlays and some betting lines. People are trusting these people with their finances and their bets most days of the week. So maybe stop doing that. Maybe don't look at the experts like they know everything, because obviously that's not always the case. But Doug, I think when I look at the things that went into the series, I think getting all this disrespect right off the bat really did help fuel the Panthers, because like I said, that's a dangerous team when they feel like they're being disrespected.
Yeah, and when I'm looking back, I'm thinking about, okay, just trying to detach myself from it. If you wanted to go into it and say, okay, the Lightning had the Art Ross Trophy winner and a goaltender who's battle-tested, okay, but the Panthers have a goaltender who's battle-tested too. If you just look at record in the last 10, or if you just looked at like the March, April, or Tampa Bay, they got hot. They did get hot at the end. That's how they wound up in second place in the Atlantic. Maybe you look at it and just say they finished better, but that would tell me that you weren't really looking at the Panthers game to game and how things look down the stretch. I mean, it's all water under the bridge at this point, but going into it, Jameson, I think the biggest thing, and we said it, we could go back and pull it up on this podcast from whenever it was, 10 or so days ago, when you and I talked about the fact that so many different elements of this series were going to cancel each other out, but the Panthers' overall depth, and specifically forward depth, was what would ultimately swing this in the Panthers' favor. And we went into the series mentioning specifically the third line, which wouldn't be a third line on many teams, but the Anton Lundell, Eetu Luostarinen, and Brad Marchand line that was as instrumental as anything in the Game 5 win specifically, but had an outstanding series overall. That was really the difference maker in the series, that the Panthers had that kind of forward depth. And then on top of that, depth overall, because we saw what a luxury it was that Uvis Balinskis is standing by and ready to be plugged into the lineup at a moment's notice.
3-0 at Amalie Arena with Uvis in the lineup. Look out. But once again, you knew going into the series Brad Marchand was on this team's third line. And you thought to yourself, no, I don't know if they can handle the Lightning.
We said it going in one team.
It was a 50-50 series. The prediction should have been maybe 60-40 at best for the Lightning because of the late season slump for the Panthers, which if you're watching the Panthers, you knew it's because guys were injured. They were resting guys. That was
it tells me that there are a lot of folks that just didn't pay attention. They didn't watch. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm watching every game down the stretch that the Minnesota Wild are playing. I'm just not. I don't have that kind of time. And not everybody can watch every team every single night. But again, a lot of those predictions, those are just people making predictions.
And I feel like the editor maybe should have, when he saw those predictions, got everyone together and said, would a couple of you mind changing your picks? This just looks bad, guys. What are we doing here? So, Doug, yes, the world has been proven wrong. I'm sure no one will say they got it wrong because that rarely happens. But moving on now, looking at the series as a whole, there's a lot of different elements to get to. I don't want to talk too much specifically about Game 5. I think when you look at that, obviously, it was the third line. It was Bob making the big saves. It was, Bennett getting the redemption goal after being in the box for the goal before.
Is that another one we're going to call the Eetu Luostarinen game?
I think we are. ESPN, main ESPN, took a break from tweeting about LeBron James to tweet about Eetu Luostarinen. I love that reality. I want to stay in that reality. How fun is that? But you look at the series as a whole, and I want to talk first about that third line because you and I, going into the series, said that would be the X factor, and I think in the end it was, especially in Game 5. But throughout the entire series at 5-on-5, that line outscored the Lightning 4-0. No goals against that line when they were together on the ice at 5-on-5. So defensively, we know how good it is because it's so good at forechecking. But at the same time, they also contributed goals. They got those points. Game 5, like you said, Eetu Luostarinen, 4 points. In the history of the Panthers, only 4 players have 4 points in a playoff game. It's Carter Verhaeghe, Ray Shepherd, Sam Reinhart, Eetu Luostarinen. I told him that last night. He said, who would have predicted that? He had a good time with that. First player, though, to ever get that many points in a clinching game, a series clinching game, and in a road game on the playoffs. So he also has a little bit of his own history. But one thing about Lusty, I went back and looked. I feel like we don't respect Lusty enough as just like a Panthers playoff performer. He's been here a while. He's been here for all the runs. So I went back and looked at it. Doug, he's 10th in games played in franchise history, playoff games played, 11th in points, 7th in plus-minus. He's not quite up there with the Barkovs and the Kachucks, the Reinhardts, the Verhaeghes, but like he's up there in playoff history just in terms of guys that have gotten it done. So respect to Lusty. Happy to see him get his flowers. He's always kind of the unsung hero. Now he's a regular hero. But Brad Marchand was driving a lot of that line. He was carrying the puck around like it was an and one mixtape. He was just cutting through that defense. He only had 2 assists, but it feels like he factored in on every single play. Anton Lundell, of course, had some big plays as well, as he always does. Great night on the faceoff circle. Anton's improvements in the dots, I think, year over year. Another big reason why that line's even better this year. But Doug, as a whole, that third line, just really, the Lightning had no answers.
Going into the series, we said that one big factor to watch, one big element to watch was the fact that the Panthers' third line, and again, you look at the Tampa Bay side, things were changing. They played 11-7. The combos were changing. They had players in and out. It wasn't the same all the way through, but going into the series, we said the Panthers' third line is Anton Lundell, Eetu Luostarinen, and Brad Marchand. 3 guys with cup rings, one who's going to have a plaque in Toronto when it's all said and done. A loaded third line.
You're talking about Eetu, right? The plaque in Toronto?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So and going back, Eetu Luostarinen game, I think if you say Eetu Luostarinen game, 2 things come to mind. And he's got a great body of work and he's had so many key moments. But now there's that game and there's the game winner in Game 6 against Boston in 2023.
I told you, he's a playoff guy.
He's had some moments, no doubt about it. But we had mentioned that Panthers third line had 3 cup winners, 1 guy who's ticketed to the Hall of Fame on it, and Tampa Bay's third line going into the series was Nick Paul, and no disrespect because they had pretty good series, but Nick Paul and 2 guys who played in the American Hockey League this year. Just based on experience alone, one of those in a long playoff series or a long playoff run sounds like it's going to have maybe a bit more to it. And the Panthers' third line may have been what ultimately swung the series in their favor. And taking it a step further, Jameson, we talked about forward depth, but a lot of those forward depth guys really came into play on the penalty kill. The Panthers' penalty kill was another one of the biggest factors in the series. If you had to point to, I guess, the bullet points, the Panthers' third line, the Panthers' penalty kill, and we knew going in the goalie that was going to be one save better than the other one. That was probably going to be the winning goaltender in this series, and Sergei Bobrovsky was better than Andrei Vasilevsky over the course of the 5 games. Andrei Vasilevsky had a vintage Vasilevsky Game 3. He had a substandard Game 1. He had a, by his standards, pretty pedestrian. The Panthers got to him in Game 5. He was decent enough in Games 2 and 4, but overall, Sergei Bobrovsky made big saves when he had to, and he was better than his counterpart in that first-round series.
Yeah, and of course, it's not the Bobbery of last year, but the one last night on Gonsalves is going to... We don't have a name for it yet, but it'll get one over time, I think, because it was just that important as well. Paul Maurice said if that happens at late in the third period, we're talking about how that was the game saver. That was
Maybe
everything.
ask Gonsalves how he would gauge that save.
There you go. But before we keep going, I asked Sam Bennett about just Bob and that save and just what it meant to the team after the game. So here's Benny talking about the not quite Bobbery there in Game 5.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby just, he does it over and over again. You can't even be surprised anymore because you know he's going to make those incredible saves. And like you said, it was at a crucial time of the game that could have changed the trajectory of the game. So, yeah, he's pretty incredible with, his timing of those massive saves to keep us in games. And, yeah, it definitely gave us a ton of energy and a ton of life on the bench.
See here, there. I mean, they always know Bobby's there because he's done it. He's got the cup, and they've seen him do it ever since the playoff run all the way to Vegas there to the final a couple of years ago. So no surprises there. But like you said, Vasi wasn't bad by any means. I know the save percentage doesn't look great, but Bob just made a couple more big saves when he had to in a really tough series where for the most part neither goalie saw a ton of shots. But a really tough series to be a goaltender. The Panthers just ended up coming out on top on that one. But Doug, I also want to talk about. We talked about the PK. I don't think the PK needs much other than the fact it was elite. They allowed 2 power play goals. I think it was 16 for 18 at end. The
5-minute kill in Game 4
that was a game winner,
a turning point of the series.
Yeah, game-winning kill right there. That 5 minutes. And you have to give some credit to Nico Sturm there as well. Not just Nico Sturm, who's just been so good on the PK, but also let's look at Seth Jones, +5 in the series, goal assists on the power play. Which was, I think, power play finished at 25%, so that's exactly what you want. But also on the penalty kill, Brad Marchand, other deadline acquisition, 4 assists, +5. All the pickups the Panthers had were so big in this series. So stick tap to Bill Zito. Our usual episode, shout out to Bill Zito. But I also got to say, the Panthers as a whole, the big players showed up, Doug.
Yep.
You just going down the list here. Sam Reinhart, 6 points. Sam Bennett, 5 points. Matthew Tkachuk, 5 points. Lundell, 5 points. Barkov, 5 points and about 60% in the faceoff circle. Absolutely elite. Eetu Luostarinen, 5 points. +6, Doug. Highest on the team in the series. More love for Eetu. Marchand, 4 points. Nate Schmidt had those 3 goals. We kind of already forgot. That was games 1 and 2, but those were
He was
Nate
the
Schmidt
story
games.
of games 1 and 2. Yep.
Yeah, can't forget that. Carter Verhaeghe, 2 big goals. And like I said, in total, 15 different guys got a point. But the big dogs really all had a big series. And then you go to the other side of the ice, Doug, and the big dogs just weren't there for the Lightning. I mean, Nikita Kucherov, I think he had a couple assists, maybe 4 or 5, no goals. And a lot of people I've read some articles, kind of coming at him today. I had no idea. He's gone 15 straight playoff games without a goal.
Back-to-back series against the Panthers without a goal. That's 2 years in a row. In the first round, the Panthers have kept him out of the goal column.
All 3 years he won the Art Ross Trophy. He went into the playoffs, scored no goals, and the Lightning lost in the first round. And I don't think that's a coincidence. Watching that series, watching every single play, he just seems right now, I don't know, maybe not earlier.
He had some great.
He has spurts.
He had some nice assists, too.
He has some really high-skill spurts, but the Panthers really put the body on him. The Panthers made him uncomfortable, and it seemed like for long stretches during games, he just didn't want any part of it.
If you look at the big guns, and this is a key matchup in any series, but if you look at the Barkov, Tkachuk, Reinhart, Verhaeghe, you stack those guys up, and we can get to Carter Verhaeghe here in a moment as well, but you put the Panthers' big guns up against what Tampa Bay's big guns did, and second straight year, Kucherov didn't score in the series against the Panthers. Jake Gensel was really good.
He was carrying that team.
He was really good. If Jake Gensel doesn't show up for that series, the Panthers get that done in 4 no problem. Jake Gensel's impact was that noticeable. He's the reason the Panthers didn't sweep the Tampa Bay Lightning in this series.
Yeah.
If we're getting right down to it. Braden Point, who you usually think of Braden Point being the guy who, when you need a goal, even if he has to do it all by himself, he can get you one in a big spot, in a big game. He's done it so many times before. Not in this series. Not in this series. He was
he had 2 goals. I can't recall them, but he
one
had 2.
one was a tip.
Yeah.
That's why you don't really think of it, and it wasn't even his at first. I think they actually changed it to his after the fact and took it away from Gensel. But Braden Point, not as noticeable as in the past, and I know he missed a game with an injury and missed a game with a suspension, but Brandon Hagel, as a he's a very productive player.
Yeah.
Had a really good year, but his playoff numbers leave a little bit to be desired here at this point in time. If you're looking at it from the Tampa Bay Lightning's perspective, so the guys that they lean on,
and then Victor Hedman was Victor Hedman.
Yep.
But like we said, that defense just he needs a helper. He needs more helping him on the blue line.
And I think you look, if you were to compare the defense groups, we were saying going in that it was largely even, and a big reason because of that is Hedman is so all world, but Victor Hedman can't play 60 minutes. And the Panthers defense, it's just deeper. It's deeper overall. Even if the Lightning are dressing 7 of them, the Panthers defense is still just going to be deeper night to night. So the Panthers overall, we pointed out the reasons why, and I don't want to give Jameson and I an attaboy, but we pointed out the reasons going into the series why we felt pretty good about the Panthers' chances, while at the same time respecting the opponent. We knew the pedigree, we knew what they were capable of, we knew the background that these guys had, we know how well coached they are, everything like that. But we pointed out the reasons why going into the series the Panthers should feel pretty good about their chances, and ultimately it was those X factors that went in the favor of the Panthers and probably pushed them over the top here.
Yeah,
and I want to get to Carter Verhaeghe in a moment, unless you have one more thought.
Yeah, I just want to quickly, on all that, get to some quick sound here from Brad Marchand and Aleksander Barkov, just talking about closing things out in Game 5, what it means to move on, but also, like I said, just the understanding the weight of those elimination games. So here's Brad Marchand and Aleksander Barkov after Game 5.
Yeah, obviously, you have a goal every round, and it's to play at your best and take control of moments and be big when opportunities present themselves, like tonight. And there's so much experience in this room, a lot of guys that have been there and been through it, and realize the importance of closing out series when you have that opportunity. So guys did a great job. Even when they scored early, you could sit back, but we didn't. We just continued to push and get better as the game went on. And obviously Bob came up huge a few times to keep us in it at the right moments, and it was great overall effort from the group.
It means a lot, and obviously we're doing some things right. So we obviously experienced. We've been this. Most of the guys have been through this for a long time. So obviously we know what it takes, and we keep working for that. And I know every year gets harder and harder, and this year's were really hard. So we're happy with the end result.
Once again, Doug, Brad Marchand just seems to have all the right words at all the right times. But hearing what he said specifically about understanding kind of like the weight of the moment, I think that's obviously this group understands it because they've been through these moments both on the losing end and on the winning end, but also the guys they brought in understand how big these moments are. And that's what you saw, I think, in Game 5, which is the Panthers treating that like it was a do-or-die game for them as well. They were not content saying, okay, we got a couple shots at this one, don't have to go crazy here. And for the same reason, going back to Game 4 when they had those 2 goals in 11 seconds, when Brad Marchand said when they were down, no one on the bench was like, all right, it'll just be 2-2 going back to Tampa. They're like, no, let's win this game. And it's that understanding, and it's guys like Brad Marchand coming in who, was it 13 years ago he won the Stanley Cup? His window's
2011.
closing. Like this is big for him as well. It feels like winning the first one all over again. And the team just has such a respect, one, for their opponent. I know they rough up their opponent. There's a lot of physicality up there, but they have a lot of respect for their opponents. 100%. You see that in the handshake line after the series. But they just know how big these games are, each and every game, how big every moment is, how big every shift is. This team doesn't sit back and relax for a second out there in these playoff games. And it's the kind of mentality you need, Doug.
And we talked to a couple of the players after the morning skate before Game 5, and it's not cliche. It's not just lip service. Matthew Tkachuk, Carter Verhaeghe said the exact same thing. They go into every game expecting a 7-game series. The mindset doesn't change. The approach doesn't change. It truly is one game at a time, and you have to think that comes with experience. There are certain teams, there might one north of the border that wears blue and white that maybe we're going to be talking about quite a bit, but you get up handily in a series, and maybe it's easy to start looking ahead. Maybe it's easy to start looking a week into the future. Maybe that's what the Toronto Maple Leafs have done, and what do you know, all of a sudden they've got themselves in a little bit of a pickle here going to Game 6 against Ottawa, and I know all eyes are going to be on that from Pantherland's perspective. But in mentioning Carter Verhaeghe, I know there were moments this season where the puck just wasn't going in the net, but you and I said right here on this podcast that in the regular season, we weren't even going to remember it come playoff time, because...
And it wasn't for lack of trying.
Yeah, and you get into a big spot in the playoffs, whether it be overtime, whether it be a tight game, whatever the situation is, and there might not be any, and this Panthers team's loaded with goal scorers, but there might not be anybody on this team who I'd rather see the puck on his stick than Carter Verhaeghe in a big spot. And back-to-back games. The empty net goal, maybe that's one that kind of gets the floodgates opened up, but he scored the empty net goal to finish off Game 4, and then after Tampa Bay opened the scoring early in Game 5, and that was the first time in the series that Tampa Bay had scored the first goal in a game, the first time the Lightning had a 1-0 lead in the series, and they got it early, and there was a ton of energy in the building. Who was it who was able to score on a rebound on a power play to kind of silence things and get the Panthers an opportunity to reset, to regroup? It was Carter Verhaeghe coming up with a big goal in a big spot. 28 goals now in his Panthers playoff career. He's getting separation between himself and the pack as the Panthers' all-time leader in playoff goals. But a couple of big ones in this series, and that was one you can't overlook because it came at a big time in Game 5 to even things up, like I said, and kind of get the building back under control, because the fans were getting into a frenzy there with the Lightning up 1-0 for the first time in the series.
And more kudos for Carter here. Hashtag kudos for Carter. 8 goals in series clinching games for him, franchise record. So like we said, big game, you want Carter.
Comes up in a big spot, you need a goal, he's the guy.
And kind of, Doug, closing things out here, I said one more stat before we talk about potential for next round, but the Paul Maurice era of Panthers hockey, since he arrived here, this team has been so good. Obviously, it's changed its whole identity to a defensive-minded team, a forechecking team, a physical team. Before he got here, this team was scoring 4 goals a game, but getting bounced after winning the President's Trophy. Now they're scoring a lot less goals. They're giving up a lot less. They're being physical. They're mean. They're villains. They're nasty. It's the best. But they know how to hold on to leads. Since he's been here, Doug, so going back to the start of that first run, the one that ended in Vegas, 22-0 when leading after 2 periods. This team has not slipped up when leading after 2 periods. They hold it. They lock it down. You go to Game 5. They had a 1-goal lead heading into the 3rd period. It ended up 6-3.
And they built on the lead. They didn't just try to lock it down. They actually built on the lead. Yep.
So just big shout out there to Paul and just the group as a whole for just an incredible stat like that.
Yeah, the Panthers, when they get leads, they're dangerous. And when they score first in games, they're dangerous. Going back to the regular season, we saw that, I believe, 33-10 in the regular season when they scored first in a hockey game. So that's part of this Panthers team's DNA. And again, it's a big reason why they were successful in this series. So now I guess the attention shifts to the Battle of Ontario. The Sunshine State Showdown goes the way of the Panthers for a second straight year. And now we watch the proceedings between the Leafs and the Senators. In Toronto, they took a 3-0 lead in the series. And let's not forget, during the regular season, I know regular season's the regular season, but Ottawa controlled that season series when those two teams met during the regular season. Ottawa won every game. And get to the playoffs. The Leafs took the first 3, though Ottawa had their opportunities. Probably
2 overtime losses.
Could have at least maybe gotten one of those, you'd think, but they went down 3-0, and now the Senators have found a way to get a couple, and now they're going home for Game 6. And I know at this point the Leafs still have the upper hand.
And all the pressure on them.
And all the pressure on them, for sure. This is probably
Austin Matthews, all the pressure on him. 2 goals in 15 playoff games.
This is the most pressure that Leafs core has really faced since they've been together in Toronto, and they've been together for a long time.
Because I feel like there's a little dread in that room and in that market where they think if this goes 7, it might not go well.
The panic button's already being pushed by
and Ottawa's playing completely free. And we've seen this. We saw this with the Panthers over the Bruins a couple years ago.
Even if Ottawa pushes it to 7, that's that's good for the Panthers.
Yeah.
I'll take any more mileage we can tack on the tires of both of those teams is good. And at this point, the Leafs do still have the upper hand. So at this point, yes, it still maybe is a little bit wishful thinking that they'll cough up 2 more in a row and blow 4 straight games, lose that series.
If any
7.
franchise can do it, it's them probably.
Well,
you ask their fan base, they'll tell you they can do it.
We'll wait and see. And you know what? There's only one team in that series that has a guy with the last name Tkachuk and Nick Cousins, who has
He's done it before.
He has caused a lot of people in Toronto to have a bad day or two in the past. So there is the possibility that lies there. But we're going to be watching that. And, of course, keep your eyes on FloridaPanthers.com and all the appropriate channels for whenever the second round, where, when, all that comes out, the schedule. Keep an eye out for that. And we'll have a preview episode coming your way for round 2 when we know the matchup. But certainly exciting things, exciting times across the National Hockey League. A lot of entertaining series. And, again, now our focus shifts to the Battle of Ontario and the Game 6 that at the time of this recording is coming up tonight from Canadian Tire Center in Ottawa, which, by the way, Canadian Tire, folks, it's not just an auto parts store. They got everything there. It's like a full-on department store. I didn't when I first
Never been.
Neither have I. But they have everything there. They're massive retail outlets. So I guess if you're ever north of the border, and I say that as somebody who's been to Canada a lot, I've never been to a Canadian Tire. Been to the Canadian Tire Center a lot.
Next season, we'll track one down when we're up there. We'll go find one.
We'll have to go find
content.
One. Yes, we'll have to go find what Canadian Tire Center. But what is Canadian Tire? Let's find out. That's it for this edition of the Territory Talk podcast. As always, presented by Baptist Health, the official sports medicine provider of the Florida Panthers. Panthers moving on to the second round for the 4th straight year, and the Panthers getting by the Tampa Bay Lightning for the 2nd consecutive year in 5 games. And the Game 5s were separated by 1 year and 1 day.
And once again, Doug, I'll remind fans to enjoy this. Like you said, it's the golden era. The Lightning, many consecutive trips to the finals, 2 cups. They've been knocked out in the first round 3 straight years. Yep.
And that's still going to be a good team.
It is hard.
They still have really good players.
None of this was guaranteed. Right. It is hard to win even a round.
They have guys in their prime. They have future Hall of Famers in their prime. They have a great head coach. And I know we pointed to some lack of experience with a couple of their guys, but I think we saw some encouraging things. I think there's something to build on. They do have some guys on the way, and they've done a good job retooling some of what they've got organizationally to set them up for the future. So there are certainly signs there of good things to come for Tampa Bay, and that rivalry is going to continue to be a fun one to watch. And again, the Lightning are going to continue to be a factor in the Eastern Conference, but this year the Panthers getting by them in 5 games. That's it for this edition of the Territory Talk podcast. Keep an eye out on FloridaPanthers.com for all the information as it pertains to round 2, once we find out the Panthers' opponent, when the games will be, where the games will be, and everything of the sort. Folks, thanks again for tuning in. This has been the Territory Talk podcast presented by Baptist Health, the official sports medicine provider of the Florida Panthers. We'll talk to you next time.